My name is Maren Whitlow, and by the beginning of 2026, I had learned that the worst kind of family betrayal does not always happen in courtrooms, hospitals, or screaming matches. Sometimes it happens on a Sunday dinner table, while the roast chicken is still warm, while your mother is still wearing her church pearls, and while everyone in the room chooses silence over mercy. In January 2022, my 24-year-old sister, Tessa, tried to tell our parents she was pregnant. Before she could even say the father's name, my father, Pierce Whitlow, cut her off and told her she was no daughter of his. My mother, Lenora, opened the front door and sent her into the rain with one backpack, a small damp ultrasound photo, and a wrinkled envelope she had been gripping like it was the last piece of her life that still made sense. I took her in that night. For more than 3 years, I worked extra shifts at Ridgeview Medical Center, watched Tessa become a mother without her own mother beside her, and helped raise a little boy named Rowan, who had no idea his grandparents had chosen reputation over him before he was even born. But the truth my parents were so afraid of did not stay buried. At Rowan's third birthday party in my backyard in Maple Ridge, North Carolina, he saw a man walk through the gate, dropped his toy dinosaur, and yelled one word that made every adult go silent. Daddy. That man was Callan Mercer, the pastor's son, and in that single moment, every polished lie my family had told at Gracewell Community Church began to fall apart. But before that birthday party, before Gracewell's church board started asking questions, before the apology that came too late and the untouched casserole dish, there was only one rainy night, one scared pregnant girl, and one phone call asking me to open the door. Tessa stood outside my apartment, in the rain, with her arms wrapped around herself, a small backpack hanging from one shoulder. Her brown hair was pasted to her cheeks. In one hand, she held a damp ultrasound photo. In the other was a wrinkled envelope, softened at the edges like she had been gripping it too hard for too long. She was 24 years old and 18 weeks pregnant. For a moment, I could not move, not because I did not understand, but because I did. I unlocked the door and pulled her inside. She kept shivering even after I wrapped a towel around her shoulders. Her lips were pale, her shoes left small puddles on the kitchen linoleum. I set the kettle on, turned the heat up, and locked the deadbolt as if the lock could keep out what had already happened. "Dad said I'm not his daughter anymore," she whispered. I stopped, with my hand still on the cabinet door. "Mom opened the front door," Tessa added. She pointed outside, like I was a stranger selling something she did not want. I wanted to ask who the father was. I wanted to ask why she had not called sooner. I wanted to ask how long she had stood in that rain before calling me. Instead, I took the ultrasound photo from her hand and placed it carefully on a dry dish towel. "Sit down, Tess." She sat on the couch like her bones couldn't hold her up anymore. That night had started with Sunday dinner at our parents' house on Laurel Lane. I can still see the table, white plates with blue rims, Lenora's roast chicken in the center, Aunt Bethany Cole talking too brightly about the church bake sale, Uncle Warren pushing peas around his plate, already sensing tension and choosing silence like he always did. My father sat at the head of the table in his pressed button-down shirt, the same one he wore to evening services. My mother sat opposite him, posture straight, pearl necklace resting perfectly against her collarbone. She had always believed presentation was a kind of morality. "People are always watching, Maren," she used to tell me. That night, she said it while smoothing a wrinkle from Tessa's sleeve before dinner, as if her body had already become something to correct. Halfway through the meal, Tessa put down her fork. Her hand moved to her stomach, almost without meaning to. "I need to tell you something." The room changed before she even said it. My mother's face tightened. My father's knife stopped against the plate. Tessa swallowed. "I am pregnant." No one breathed. Then my father pushed back his chair so hard the legs scraped the floor. "You have embarrassed this family." He did not ask if she was safe. He did not ask if she had seen a doctor. He did not even ask who the father was. Tessa's eyes filled, but she lifted her chin. "His name is—" My father slammed his palm against the table. "Do not you dare make this worse." That was the first moment I understood there was more in that room than shock. There was fear. Not fear for Tessa, fear of a name. My mother rose slowly. She folded her napkin and placed it beside her plate with the same care she used when arranging flowers for church. Then she walked to the front door and opened it. "You need to leave." Tessa stared at her. "Mom, please." Lenora did not raise her voice. That made it worse. "You made your choice." Then she stepped closer and reached for the small pearl pendant at Tessa's throat. It had belonged to our grandmother. Tessa had worn it since her 18th birthday. My mother unclasped it and pulled it away. "This is for Whitlow women who know how to carry themselves." Aunt Bethany looked down at her lap. Uncle Warren cleared his throat, then said nothing. I stood up. Tessa looked at me like she did not expect anyone to move. I grabbed my coat from the back of the chair and took hers from the hallway closet. My father turned toward me. "If you walk out with her, do not come back asking us for help." I looked at him, then at my mother standing by the open door, framed by the porch light and the rain. "Then I guess we will learn who family really is." I did not say it bravely. My voice shook. But I said it, and I took my sister out of that house. Back in my apartment, Tessa fell asleep on the couch before the tea cooled. She curled around herself with one hand still resting protectively over her stomach. I stood there for a long time, listening to the rain tapping against the window and the old heater clicking in the wall. When I bent to pick up her backpack, the envelope slipped out and landed near my foot. It was not sealed. I did not open it. I still tell myself that matters. But I saw the name written across the front in Tessa's careful handwriting. Callan M. That was all, just a first name and an initial. I did not know Callan Mercer then. I did not know his father stood behind the pulpit at Gracewell Community Church every Sunday. I did not know that the name on that envelope was the reason my parents had been more afraid of Tessa's speaking than of Tessa leaving. I put the envelope back in her bag. The next morning, my mother called at 7:13. She did not ask where Tessa had slept. She did not ask about the baby. She asked when I was bringing my sister home to apologize before people at Gracewell heard the wrong version. I told her I was not. Her silence was cold enough to feel through the phone. "Then you can take responsibility for whatever happens next," Lenora said. After the call ended, I opened my banking app at the kitchen table. My savings account showed $16,480. I wrote numbers on the back of an old envelope. Rent, insurance, groceries, prenatal visits, utilities, gas, time off work, a possible lease change if my landlord found out Tessa was staying. The total kept growing. Across the room, my sister slept under a faded blue blanket, the ultrasound photo drying beside my sink, the envelope with Callan M tucked back inside her backpack. I thought I had opened my door for one night. I was wrong. That night was only the beginning. By Monday morning, I was sitting in my supervisor's office at Ridgeview Medical Center asking for extra shifts before I had even figured out how to explain why. Dr. Naomi Bell looked at me over the rim of her glasses. She was 53, sharp, kind in a way that never felt soft, and one of the few people at work who could read a room without making a show of it. "You already take more weekend coverage than anyone on this floor, Maren. I can handle more." She leaned back, studying me. "Can you, or do you just need to?" I looked down at my hands. My nails were still ragged from handling Tessa's damp ultrasound photo the night before. "Both." Naomi did not ask for the whole story. She clicked through the schedule, moved 2 evening patients, and gave me Tuesday and Saturday coverage for the next month. If you need a shift, ask. If you need someone to sit with you for 10 minutes and not fix anything, ask for that too. That was the first kind thing anyone outside my apartment had said since Tessa showed up in the rain. Reality arrived faster than sympathy did. 3 days later, Mr. Hanley from the leasing office knocked on my door at Ash Street Apartments. He was not unkind, just practical, which somehow made it worse. He had noticed Tessa coming and going, noticed the second car in the guest lot, noticed the extra trash bag by the stairs. If your sister is staying beyond 2 weeks, she needs to be added to the lease. She is pregnant and does not have anywhere else to go. I understand, but the policy is the policy. By the time he left, my rent went from $1,250 to $1,390 a month, and I owed a $600 deposit by Friday. I closed the door, rested my forehead against it, and counted backward from 10, like I told anxious patients to do during therapy. Tessa was sitting at the kitchen table with a notebook open in front of her. She had written rent, groceries, gas, vitamins, and doctor in neat columns. Beside each one, she had left a blank space. What is that? Everything I owe you. Tess. No, Maren, I need to write it down. You do not owe me for being my sister. Her eyes filled, but she pressed her lips together until the tears stayed put. I need to feel like I am still a person, not just a problem you're solving. I wanted to argue. Instead, I pulled out a chair and sat across from her. Then write it down if you need to, but do not mistake a notebook for a debt. She nodded, but she kept writing. She tried to work. For 2 weeks, she picked up short shifts at Maple Diner, refilling coffee and carrying plates with both hands pressed carefully under her belly. After every shift, she came home pale and quiet, her ankles swollen above her sneakers. She would smile at me like smiling made it less frightening. I am fine. You look like a ghost in a diner apron. It is a very flattering ghost. The joke barely landed. At work, I learned what the town was saying before Tessa did. Naomi found me in the staff break room one afternoon, stirring powdered creamer into coffee I had no appetite for. Maren, I heard something at Gracewell. My stomach tightened. Reverend Ellis Mercer preached Sunday about a young woman who mistook rebellion for freedom. He did not say Tessa's name. He did not have to. Naomi's face softened. Your mother was in the front row. Did she leave? No. That was all Naomi had to say. That same week, I ran into Donna Pruitt at Pruitt's Market. I was comparing cereal prices, trying to decide whether name brand mattered if I was already losing sleep over rent. Donna's cart stopped beside mine. She had known my mother for years through Gracewell and always wore lipstick the color of cranberry sauce. Maren, honey, your mother must be heartbroken. Not Tessa, not the baby, my mother. I looked at the cereal box in my hand, then at the cheaper one below it. I put the expensive box back. She has had a hard week, I managed. Donna touched my arm like I had confirmed the story she wanted to believe. You girls will understand one day. Mothers carry shame differently. I walked out with store-brand cereal, prenatal vitamins, eggs, and a headache that lasted until midnight. That night, I found Tessa at the table with her old laptop open. The apartment was dark except for the screen. Her notebook was beside her, but this time it was not full of numbers. It was full of names, dates, and crossed-out sentences. She closed the laptop too quickly. I saw enough. Callan? Her face changed. Do not ask me tonight. I pulled out the chair across from her. Then tell me what I need to know tonight. For a long moment, the only sound was the refrigerator humming. "I tried to reach him," she said. She opened the laptop again. There was an email that had bounced back, a phone number that no longer connected, a scanned receipt from a letter sent to the Mercer house here in Maple Ridge. I mailed it after the first doctor confirmed the pregnancy. I thought if I could not reach Callan directly, his parents would get it to him. Did they? Tessa laughed once, without humor. 3 days later, Reverend Mercer called me to his office at Gracewell. The room seemed to shrink around us. What did he say? She rubbed both hands over her face. That Callan was in Denver, that he had a future, that he had moved on. He told me if I cared about Callan, I would let him have the life he earned. I felt something cold settle under my ribs. And you believed him? Tessa looked at her belly. After Mom and Dad threw me out, believing I was easy to leave behind did not feel impossible. By week 31, her body started telling the truth neither of us wanted to hear. She got dizzy walking from the couch to the bathroom. One evening, she leaned against the kitchen counter and said the room had tilted. I wrapped the blood pressure cuff around her arm. The numbers blinked back at me. 154/96. We are going to Ridgeview. I'm fine. You are not negotiating with a physical therapist who knows where the car keys are. At the hospital, Nurse Leanne Carter checked her in and asked for an emergency contact. Tessa looked at me. Just me, I told Leanne. She wrote my name twice and did not ask why. After the doctor said the baby was okay for now, but Tessa needed rest, monitoring, and no more diner shifts, I stepped into the hallway and texted my mother. Tessa is at Ridgeview. Blood pressure complications. The baby is okay for now. At 9:43 p.m., the message changed to red. No call came, no text, no mother. I sat on a plastic chair under fluorescent lights until Naomi appeared with a paper cup of coffee and handed it to me. I do not know how to be enough for both of them. She sat beside me. Then do not be everything. Be the person who does not leave. The next morning, Miles Harper from occupational therapy caught me by the elevator. He had kind eyes and terrible timing. Coffee after shift sometime? I almost smiled. I cannot. He nodded, not offended. Another time then. Maybe, I said, though we both heard how far away that maybe was. When I brought Tessa home, the apartment felt smaller than before. The fridge was nearly empty. Her notebook sat open on the table beside the drying ultrasound photo and the unfinished letter to Callan Mercer. The baby was safe for the moment. Tessa was home for the moment. But I understood something I had not understood the night she arrived. This was not just about my sister being pregnant. Someone had worked very hard to make sure Callan Mercer stayed outside the story. The first time I held Rowan Whitlow, he fit in the bend of one arm and somehow made the whole hospital room feel too small. He was born in June 2022 at Ridgeview Medical Center after a long night of monitors, nurses, and Tessa gripping my hand so hard my fingers went numb. He weighed 6 pounds, 8 ounces, healthy and furious, with a head full of soft brown curls that made Nurse Leanne Carter smile before she even finished cleaning him up. "Look at that hair," she said. Tessa laughed and cried at the same time. It was the first sound of real joy I had heard from her in months. No one from Laurel Lane came. Not Pierce, not Lenora, not Aunt Bethany, not Uncle Warren. No one from Gracewell Community Church. No flowers arrived from the women's ministry. No text came from my mother asking if her daughter had survived childbirth. When Leanne came back with the forms, she paused beside the bed. "Emergency contact?" Tessa looked at me. "Just me," I answered. Leanne wrote my name once, then again on the second line. She did not ask why there was no father listed in the room, no grandmother waiting in the hallway, no family crowding the doorway with balloons. Good nurses know when paperwork is already painful enough. Later, when Tessa slept, I went downstairs to the hospital gift shop and bought a small yellow blanket. It cost more than it should have, but I bought it anyway. Rowan needed something that never belonged to anyone who rejected him. When I placed him in Tessa's arms wrapped in that yellow blanket, she touched his cheek with one finger. "I am sorry you have so few people, baby." "He has the people who stayed," I told her. The first year did not soften us. It wore us down and shaped us at the same time. My savings dropped from $16,480 to $2,940 in 11 months. I picked up extra shifts at Ridgeview. Tessa studied for her CNA certification while Rowan slept in 20-minute stretches. Our refrigerator door became a command center, covered with appointment cards, daycare notes, rent reminders, my work schedule, and Tessa's study calendar. Some nights I fell asleep in my parked car before climbing the stairs to the apartment. Some mornings, Tessa stood at the counter bouncing Rowan with one foot while highlighting textbook pages with one hand. She still kept that notebook of expenses, crossing out little amounts when she could pay me back. One night, Rowan cried for hours. Tessa had not slept. I had just finished a 12-hour shift. The apartment smelled like formula and laundry that had sat too long in the washer. I snapped. "I gave up everything too, Tessa." The room went quiet, except for Rowan's crying. Tessa looked at me like I had touched a bruise I had no right to press. "I know," she said softly. "That is what makes it worse." I apologized before sunrise. She accepted it, but neither of us pretended the words had not happened. Love does not make you tireless. It just gives you a reason to come back after you fail. By early 2023, Tessa got hired as a CNA at Briar Glen Assisted Living. She came home smelling like hand sanitizer and lavender lotion, exhausted but steadier. One of her residents, Mrs. Hattie Monroe, was 80 and sharp enough to cut through nonsense before breakfast. At first, Hattie complained about everything Tessa did. Too much ice in the water, not enough butter on the toast, pillow too flat, blanket too scratchy. Then, one afternoon, Tessa stayed late to braid Hattie's thin silver hair before a church group visit. After that, Hattie started asking for her by name. "Blood tells people what to call you," Hattie told Tessa one evening. "It does not tell you who will come when you ring the bell." Tessa told me that while folding Rowan's onesies at our kitchen table. She tried to say it lightly, but her hands slowed on the tiny cotton sleeves. Maple Ridge began changing its tone after that. Not all at once. Small towns rarely admit they were wrong. They just start asking different questions. A woman at Pruitt's Market stopped Tessa by the canned goods and said her mother at Briar Glen adored her. One of my patients at Ridgeview told me his aunt would not stop talking about the sweet young CNA with the little boy. Around the same time, the questions found my parents. Donna Pruitt cornered my mother after service one Sunday and asked how old her grandson was now. Lenora, who could organize a fundraiser for 200 people without looking at a clipboard, could not answer. A man at my father's hardware store asked Pierce if it was true he had a little grandson. My father pretended not to hear over the key-cutting machine. Rowan was 16 months old when I started seeing Callan Mercer in his face. At first, I did not have a name for it. I only knew Rowan did not look like the Whitlows. His curls were darker. His jaw had a little square set that no one in our family had. When he smiled, something about his eyes felt borrowed from a stranger. Then I saw Reverend Ellis Mercer at Pruitt's Market. I had Rowan in the cart seat, chewing on the corner of a cracker box I had not paid for yet. Ellis came around the end of the aisle, stopped, and looked at him too long. Rowan smiled at him. Ellis turned away so fast, his hand tightened around the basket handle. That was when I knew he was not just the man who had preached about my sister. He knew the story from the inside. The letter came a few weeks later. I was helping Tessa clear out a stuck drawer in the bedroom.
It jammed, then gave way at all once, spilling old receipts, baby socks, and folded paper onto the floor. The top page opened just enough for me to see 2 words: Dear Callan. I should have looked away. I did not. I saw Rowan's name. I saw Denver. I saw Reverend Mercer told me you had moved on. I saw enough. That night, I placed the letter on the kitchen table. Tessa went pale. I did not read all of it, but you read enough. Yes. She sat down slowly, like her knees had stopped trusting her. Callan Mercer was his name. We were together before he left for Denver. His father hated it. He called me that Whitlow girl, like I was something stuck to his shoe. She told me Callan had gotten a fellowship and then a job offer through Summit and Cross Engineering in Denver. Ellis pushed him to leave early. After Tessa found out she was pregnant, she mailed the first letter to the Mercer house. Then Ellis called her into his church office. He told me Callan had moved on, she said. He told me if I dragged Callan back, I would ruin his future. Did Callan ever say that? No. Then he deserves to know. Tessa covered her face. What if he believed his father because he wanted to? I did not have an answer that would not hurt her. By the spring of 2024, I found Callan Mercer on LinkedIn. Structural engineer, Summit and Cross Engineering, Denver office. His profile photo made my stomach drop. Brown curls, square jaw, Rowan's smile waiting in an adult face. I typed the message 3 times before sending it. This is Maren Whitlow, Tessa's sister. There is something important you need to know. It is about a child. His reply came 7 minutes later. What child? I called him before I could lose my nerve. I told him Tessa had been pregnant when he left Maple Ridge. I told him she had tried to reach him. I told him Rowan was almost 2. For a long time, there was only silence on the line. Then Callan spoke, and his voice sounded like someone standing in the wreckage of a house he had not known was burning. My father told me Tessa had someone else. He said she did not want me contacting her. He stopped, breathing hard. I believed him because it was easier than fighting him. By the time we hung up, Callan had booked a flight to North Carolina. I sat in our small kitchen with my phone still in my hand, watching Rowan sleep under the yellow blanket. For the first time since Tessa stood outside my door in the rain, the truth had reached someone who was supposed to hear it. 2 days later, I drove to Asheville Regional Airport with both hands locked on the steering wheel and a silence in the car that felt heavier than traffic. Callan Mercer came through baggage claim carrying 1 duffel bag and a gift bag with tissue paper sticking out at the wrong angles. He was taller than I expected, thinner too, like the flight had taken more from him than miles. The moment I saw his hair, those same brown curls Rowan woke up with every morning, my throat tightened. He stopped a few feet away from me. Maren? I nodded. He looked like he wanted to ask 10 questions and was afraid of every answer. In the parking garage, he put the gift bag carefully in the back seat, as if a badly wrapped toy could break the whole situation open. What does he look like? Callan asked once we were on the highway. I kept my eyes on the road. He has your hair, Tessa's stubbornness, and a laugh nobody in my family deserved to miss. Callan turned toward the window. His jaw moved like he was biting back words. He did not cry then. I think he was saving that for the moment he saw what had been stolen from him. Tessa was waiting at the apartment door with Rowan on her hip. She looked calm in the way people look calm when they have used all their fear and have nothing left but posture. Rowan stared at Callan. Callan crouched slowly, keeping his hands open on his knees. Hi, Rowan. Rowan leaned forward, studying him. Then he reached out and touched Callan's hair with the serious focus of a child solving a puzzle. Same, Rowan said. Callan pressed one hand over his mouth and looked down. His shoulders shook once. He pulled himself together before Rowan could get scared. That is right, buddy. Same. Tessa looked away first. After Rowan fell asleep that night, the 3 of us sat in the living room with the lamp on low. I stayed in the kitchen rinsing a bottle longer than necessary, close enough to hear, far enough to let them speak. "Why did you believe him?" Tessa asked. Callan rubbed both hands over his face. "Because he is my father, because I was 25 and in Denver and scared to admit I had left something behind that mattered, because believing him was easier than fighting him." Tessa's voice cracked. "I sent a letter. I know that now. You should have looked harder." I should have looked harder. The room went still. Then Callan said the thing I think Tessa needed most and hated most at the same time. "I failed you before I even knew I was a father." Tessa wiped her cheek with the heel of her hand. "I should have believed I was worth finding." Neither of them reached for the other. That would have been too easy. They sat with the damage between them, finally named.
A week later, they met with Rachel Wynn, a family law attorney in Maple Ridge. I drove Tessa because her hands shook too much to hold the keys. Callan met us there with a folder of documents and a face that said he had not slept. Rachel was direct, which I appreciated. She explained voluntary paternity acknowledgement, updating Rowan's birth certificate if Tessa agreed, a parenting agreement, and child support Callan could begin without waiting for a court fight. "This is not about punishing either of you," Rachel said. "It is about making sure Rowan is protected, legally and practically." Tessa nodded. "And grandparents?" Rachel folded her hands. "No one gets to pick him up, visit him alone, or insert themselves into his life without the consent of his legal parents. Boundaries should be written down before emotions start rewriting them." That sentence stayed with me, because emotions were already trying. Aunt Bethany called 3 days later. "Your mother cries every night," she said. "Did she cry when Tessa was at Ridgeview?" Bethany went quiet. "Maren, it is complicated." "No, it is embarrassing now. That is different." She sighed. Then the truth slipped out. Donna Pruitt had asked Lenora why no one ever saw her with her grandson. Someone at Pierce's hardware store had asked if Rowan liked toy trucks. My parents had spent nearly 2 years pretending Rowan was not real, and suddenly Maple Ridge was asking why. Lenora came to Ash Street Apartments that Friday with a white ceramic casserole dish in both hands. She looked past me into the apartment like she expected to be invited back into a story she had abandoned. "I thought we could talk." "About Rachel?" "About all of this, about getting things back to normal." "Normal was you opening the door and sending your pregnant daughter into the rain." Her mouth tightened. "We were hurt. So was she. We were embarrassed. She was alone. We did not know what to do, Maren." I stepped closer. "Did you know what to do when you read my hospital text and said nothing?" For the first time, Lenora did not have a polished answer. Later, Aunt Bethany told me Pierce had seen that message too. He had picked up his phone, thumb hovering over the call button, until Lenora said if they answered then, everyone would think they approved. So he set the phone down. That was my father in one sentence. He knew there was a right thing to do. He simply chose the quieter, wrong one. Callan chose a louder truth. He went to Gracewell Community Church and confronted Reverend Ellis Mercer in his office. I heard the details from Callan afterward, sitting on the hood of his rental car outside my building. "He said he protected my future," Callan told me. "He said Tessa would have pulled me down. He said a scandal would have followed me to Denver." "What did he say?" Callan looked toward the apartment window, where Rowan's dinosaur nightlight glowed faintly through the blinds. "I told him he did not protect my future. He erased my son from it." June heard part of it from the hallway. When Callan mentioned the letter, she stepped into the office and asked what letter. Ellis would not answer. Callan said his mother's face changed slowly, like she was remembering pieces she had been told not to question. A sealed envelope once tucked into Ellis's desk. The way he used to say, "that Whitlow girl," the call from Denver when Callan asked about Tessa and Ellis told June not to interfere. June did not know everything yet, but she knew enough to stop looking at her husband like a man who had only made a mistake. By early 2025, I bought a small two-bedroom house on Sycamore Street with a first-time homebuyer loan and more fear than confidence. The fence leaned, the porch needed paint, the backyard was small, but it was ours. When Rowan's third birthday came around that June, Tessa wanted the party there. Dinosaur plates, chocolate cake, a plastic slide, daycare kids, Naomi, Miles, Eli Brooks, and whoever could behave like the day belonged to Rowan. Pierce and Lenora asked to come. Tessa agreed, but only after making rules. No playing victim, no forcing Rowan to call them anything, no talk of forgiveness in front of him, and Reverend Ellis Mercer was not invited. That night, Callan texted his mother, "If Dad shows up at Rowan's party, I need you to hear the truth for yourself." June did not promise anything. The evening before the party, I stood in my backyard on Sycamore Street, holding a roll of blue streamers while the folding table wobbled under my hand. Balloons bumped softly against the porch rail, the dinosaur tablecloth snapped in the warm air. To anyone else, it looked like a child's birthday party waiting to happen. To me, it looked like every lie was about to be asked to stand in the same yard as the truth. By noon the next day, my little backyard on Sycamore Street looked almost cheerful enough to lie. There were blue balloons tied to the porch rail, a dinosaur tablecloth over the folding table, a plastic slide near the fence, and a chocolate cake with green frosting sitting under a clear cover on the kitchen counter. Naomi arrived early with a wrapped gift and took one look at my face. "Breathe, Maren." I am breathing. That is what patients say when they are not breathing right. Miles helped me tape streamers to the porch and then stepped back without making himself part of the drama. Eli Brooks arrived with a bag of toy trucks and helped Miles move the cooler beside the porch. Tessa was in the kitchen reading a card from Mrs. Hattie Monroe, who could not come because her knees were acting up. "For the mother who kept showing up," it said. Tessa pressed the card to her chest for 1 second, then wiped her eyes and went back to slicing strawberries. Pierce and Lenora arrived right on time. My mother looked like she was going to church, not a child's birthday party. Cream blouse, pressed slacks, hair pinned smooth. In her hands was a white ceramic casserole dish with a chip along one rim. She held it out to me like an apology could be baked. I made chicken and rice. I took it and set it on the table beside the cake, cheese puffs, fruit, and paper cups. It looked out of place, too formal, too heavy, like my mother had brought the old house with her and expected us to make room. Rowan ran past with a plastic dinosaur in his fist, stopped and looked up at me. Who are they? The yard seemed to quiet around that tiny question. "They are your grandparents, sweetheart." He blinked at Pierce and Lenora. "Oh." Then he ran back to the slide. Lenora's face stiffened. Pierce looked down at his shoes. No one had to accuse them of being strangers. Rowan had already done it by telling the truth children do not know how to soften. A few minutes later, Callan came through the back gate, carrying Rowan's gift. Rowan saw him and dropped the dinosaur. "Daddy!" He ran across the grass and threw himself into Callan's legs. Callan picked him up easily, kissed the side of his head, and held him like he had been practicing every day since he came back. The yard went still. Pierce stared at Callan. "That is Mercer's boy." Lenora's hand went to her throat. Aunt Bethany, standing near the lemonade, set her cup down without drinking. Tessa stepped beside Callan. Her voice was calm, but I saw her fingers tremble before she folded them together. "This is Callan Mercer, Rowan's father, the man you never let me name." I looked at my parents. "She tried to tell you at dinner. You threw her out before she finished the sentence." Pierce swallowed. "This changes everything." "No,
It explains everything. It does not erase anything. Lenora's eyes filled, but even her tears seemed trained to perform. We did not know. The whole church was watching us. People talked. We were humiliated. Tessa's face changed then. Not angry, clear. I gave birth with one person holding my hand. Rowan learned to walk without you. Please do not tell me you were the one abandoned. No one moved. Pierce tried to gather himself, reaching for the voice he used when men at Gracewell asked him to pray over breakfast. We need to sit down as a family. You said she was no daughter of yours. He looked at me, and for once, my father had no scripture, no wisdom, no respectable answer. Then the side gate opened again. Reverend Ellis Mercer stepped into my yard like he expected the air itself to make room for him. He wore a pale blue shirt and polished shoes. His eyes moved from Callan to Tessa to Rowan, then to the adults standing silent around the lawn. Callan lowered Rowan to the grass and stepped in front of him. "This is not the place," Ellis said. Callan's voice did not rise. "This is my son's birthday party. It is exactly the place." Ellis glanced toward Pierce and Lenora, then back at Callan. "This should be handled privately. You had 3 years to handle it privately. You used them to lie." Before Ellis could answer, June Mercer came through the gate behind him. She looked shaken but not surprised. Later, I learned she had seen him take down my address and followed because Callan's message had been sitting heavy in her pocket all morning. "If Dad shows up at Rowan's party, I need you to hear the truth for yourself." Tessa looked at June. "I sent a letter to your house when I was pregnant." June turned to Ellis. "What letter?" Callan did not look away from his father. "I never got it." June's face went pale in a way Lenora's had not. Hers was not embarrassment. It was recognition, pieces fitting together too late. Ellis said nothing. That silence did more than any confession could have done. He left a few minutes later. June did not follow him. She walked to Rowan, knelt carefully in the grass, and kept her hands folded in her lap. "Hello, Rowan. I am June." She did not ask him to call her anything. She did not cry loudly or reach for him. She only waited. Rowan studied her, then handed her his plastic dinosaur. She accepted it like it was a fragile gift. After that, the party slowly remembered it was a party. The children ran again. The cake was cut. Naomi passed out napkins. Miles fixed the leaning balloon string on the fence. The grown-ups spoke softly, as if the truth had changed the volume of the whole yard. Every dish on the table was touched, except my mother's casserole. The spoon stayed clean. Before leaving, Lenora asked Tessa if she could hold Rowan once. Tessa looked at Callan, then at me. I did not answer for her. Finally, she nodded. Lenora held him carefully, almost reverently. Rowan stayed still for maybe 10 seconds, then reached back toward Tessa. "Mommy." Lenora handed him over. Pierce walked her to the car. I did not follow. I did not promise we would talk soon. I did not say everything would be okay. For once, I let them leave without chasing them. By early 2026, things were not perfect, but they were honest. Tessa stayed in the nursing program at Blue Ridge Technical and Community College. Callan transferred from the Denver office to a hybrid position through Summit and Cross Engineering in Charlotte. Rachel Wynn helped them finish the voluntary paternity acknowledgement and a parenting agreement. Callan paid support, but more importantly, he showed up. Daycare drop-offs, bedtime stories, pediatric appointments, the ordinary work of being a father. Gracewell Community Church asked Ellis to step away from preaching while the board reviewed what happened. Elaine Porter made sure the question was not about scandal.
It was about a pastor using a pulpit to shame a young woman while hiding his own part in her pain. Lenora stepped down from the women's ministry. Pierce stopped being asked to lead prayers so often. June came every other Saturday. She sat on the floor, built towers with Rowan, read the same truck book 5 times, and never once bought his affection with expensive gifts. Eventually, he called her Grandma June. Pierce sent Tessa a letter. For the first time, he wrote the words, "I was wrong." Tessa kept it in a drawer. "Maybe someday," she told me. "When they show up long enough for him to know their names," I said. A few weeks later, Rowan drew a family picture for my refrigerator. There was Tessa, Callan, Rowan, me, and Grandma June. Pierce and Lenora were not there. Children draw the truth before adults are ready to say it. That spring, I found an old white casserole dish in the back of my cabinet, one Aunt Bethany had brought from my mother months before. I remembered the rain, the ultrasound photo, the message marked red at 9:43 p.m., the empty hospital room, the untouched casserole at Rowan's party. I did not break it. I did not throw it across the room. I put it in a donation box and carried it to my car. Family is not who comes back when the story looks clean enough to tell at church. Family is who steps in when everything is still burning, when someone is soaked with rain, when the fridge is almost empty, when there is no plan except to open the door. I was not a hero. I was a sister who opened the door, and sometimes that is enough to save the family that comes next. If this story made you think of someone who showed up when you needed them most, tell me about them in the comments. Do you think Tessa should ever give Pierce and Lenora another chance, or should they have to prove themselves for a long time first? If you want more stories about family, truth, and the kind of justice that does not need shouting, stay with the channel for the next one.